So I gave this actually at a UX class here back late last year. I figured I'd repurpose it for tonight because it's very relevant. So I organized the group. I've been doing this for a year and a half. I know a lot of you guys actually from coming out. My background is I have a UX agency called Momentum. I'm a partner of it, going on my 10th year of it. 10th long, hard year, as I like to refer to it as. But I've learned a lot, and so I wanted to walk you guys through just generally like the process that we follow as an agency. It's not per se the process that I'm prescribing to you. I'm just sort of giving you process in a nutshell, no pun intended, Adam. I was also going to talk about some myths that I commonly get about UI, UX, and talk about why they're myths. I was going to talk about just some general guiding principles that you can read in a book, but they're sort of my take on what I practically see out there in the world of working with clients. And then I was going to talk about some tools. So we usually start with research. I think that's kind of a no-brainer. Research really could be driven by a variety of things, and kind of what Adam alluded to is you could be developing a new product, you could be taking an existing product for a redesign, you could have a large enterprise, or you could have a startup, and you really want to try to tailor the process of research that you do towards what those goals are. User stories, I feel like it's a piece of documentation everyone hates doing. They're really valuable, though. I tell my team that, how do we deliver design without designing yet? And user stories is definitely an artifact that helps with that. We like to spend time exploring. So I think a lot of times you'll hear process as a very linear process. First we do the research, then we do the IA, then we do the wireframes, then we do the visual, whatever. How about exploring completely different paths, and based on that, letting that dictate what path you want to walk down? So we do that occasionally on various projects as well. Information architecture, Adam did a very in-depth walkthrough of that. How does the user get from point A to point G? And then we actually plan it. I know that's kind of a weird thing, but clients want to know budgets and when you'll have it delivered. And then in terms of iterating, this would be showing it to users, putting it in people's hands, showing it to stakeholders, being empathetic that you don't know very much, and that they'll basically tell you what's working and what's not. And then giving some form of documentation. This could be everything from a functional spec, which Adam went over very much in depth. You could also do a user experience style guide. You can do an interaction specification. Anything you can do to bridge that gap with making sure when the code comes back, it's somewhat reflective of all the time you just spent designing it. I was going to talk about just some trends that I'm seeing. So this is one of them, which is basically, I call it the sort of minimalization of visual design. So, this was like when I started in the late 90s, and now we're sort of proceeding into what modern visual design is, which is like remove everything, remove all gradients, remove all drop shadows. We don't want to see any sort of lines or anything, and just get rid of all of it. And that's basically considered like modern and good looking nowadays. So this is kind of like what we've arrived at. Less is more, basically. I thought that was very reflective. Vertical menus, they're everywhere. They've sort of made their way onto the web now. Why have they? I have no idea. Some ideas I have are that they're fairly scalable and that you can add really large amounts of things to a navigation. I think they also translate well from tablet, desktop, web, down to small device, because essentially like you can make this one screen and that the next screen on your iPhone. Mobile first. So on enterprise, I'd say it's still catching up to this. On consumer, mobile first has kind of been prevalent for a while. That's the idea of sort of nailing the mobile experience and then figuring out how to translate that onto the web. Platform agnostic. This is the, I think somewhat gone are the days of we want this version of our app to look on iOS like an iOS app, and we want this version of our app on Android to look like an Android app. That's what I used to get from clients. I don't get that too much anymore. I'm getting, we want the same exact experience no matter what device I'm on, no matter if it's on the web or tablet or whatever. It's same interactions, it's the same brand, and just the overall same experience. Component libraries. So how many people here know what Bootstrap is? There's a million bootstraps. There's Flatstrap and whatever strap. We get asked a lot now to actually start with thinking of what is the component library that it's going to be built with, and that's essentially a design requirement or constraint. And I think you guys probably, if you haven't run into this already, you definitely will. You know, go into Sketch and just look at the default libraries it comes with. It's pretty amazing. Animation that helps. So the flash banner that's, you know, blinking red that annoys the crap out of you, hopefully has gone away. I still see them on some of the weird sites that I go to, which I won't talk about. But enter a new world of animation that actually helps somewhat. It reinforces usability. It's cool. You can use it to sort of accentuate your branding, possibly. I think people put some of it in the category of visual design. It lends to your credibility and the overall experience. Our next meetup event is on this exact subject next month, so if you guys want to attend that, it should be pretty cool. Hamburger menus. Who loves a hamburger menu? Anyone? I hate them. They're very efficient, but it's almost like, we couldn't really figure out where to put this or how it's going to be presented. Just put it in the hamburger menu. I think it's here to stay for a little while at least. I'm hoping somebody comes up with something better. It's like the new drop-down main navigation or something. Context hiding. So this is one that really trips me out because Jacob Nielsen would be rolling over in his grave if he saw this, even though he's still alive technically. But the whole idea that we're going to remove your main navigation, we're going to remove context, and not let you see where you're at because you're scrolling. Oh, and by the way, you don't really need it because you're scrolling. But with the flick of a thumb, you know what? We'll show it to you again. So this is where the sort of baseline heuristics are somewhat having to be modified and changed to what we now know and kind of expect from software. So useful feedback. This is a really cool trend, I think. This is like one way to address what Debbie was talking about like that really long form you have to fill out where you're like, why are you asking me, you know, whatever. And what I'm seeing now is basically, you know, different ways to ask me that question, you know, and to get me to fill out my profile or my form, you know, on an ongoing basis, where possibly I may think it's fun, where possibly I may think it's going to give me value to it. So you don't always have to ask me everything when I'm signing up for life insurance. You could probably just get my email address or whatever, and then if you figure out how to ask me that same question, I might tell it to you. Cards are your friends. I'm going to skip over that one. I feel like cards is kind of burnt out now. Fixed top navigation. So this is an interesting trend. This is on Trulia, where, you know, as you scroll, you can have layers and layers of navigation build and sort of stay with you as you scroll down the page. I think it's actually a really useful paradigm to use. So now I'm going to go over just some general principles that you can read in a book, but I deal with them all the time in real life with clients, so I just wanted to like reiterate them to you in give them a name. So one is discoverability. So, you know, how in the hell do you find the Arm & Hammer baking soda amidst all of this? And all I really want to sell you is my Arm & Hammer baking soda, or that's my one feature that differentiates me from all of my competitors. And I think a lot of companies forget to take the 90% of features that you have that are really cool and you really want to talk about, but there's only 10% of them that the people actually use. So put that in their face and make it just blatantly apparent. The classic example of this is Microsoft Word. It actually did that thing that you wanted it to do, but you just couldn't find it because it was buried amidst all of this crap. So, you know, the trend that I'm seeing now with apps is that, you know, they do a handful of things really well and they present that one thing that they do really well in your face and you can't miss it. It's a button. Progressive disclosure. So that's like a $25 word for what really means show it to me as I tell you I need to use it. So long gone are the days of the whole comment field sitting there on the page because I haven't told you that I want to leave a comment yet. I haven't clicked. So when I click, then show me name, email, comment, right? So I think you see this a lot in apps nowadays. And this is actually an old technique of heuristics. Forgiveness. Trying to think of a good example of this. So Google Maps does a great job of this, and a lot of this is not design, it's actually development. But this is when I'm typing in my phone number on the checkout page of your e-commerce site. Don't make me put parentheses around my area code. You know, I put a dash in it. The system should know to format my phone number and that it is a phone number. Or in Google Maps, you can mistype almost any city, and the system is smart enough to sort of figure it out. Or what we call forgiving the user for not giving you the data in the format that you wanted. And there's ways you can do this through the design as well. Affordance. This is really like pure intuitiveness, which I don't think exists, but we're always as designers striving to get as close to that as possible. So this is when you walked in that door and you saw the handle, you knew on almost pure intuition, the shape of the object, the form dictates the function, right? It's really hard to get better than that, but you know, my next closest is when you're watching a video on YouTube and you see the full screen icon with the 4 arrows going each way. It's almost like just the arrows in and of itself pointing outward dictate to you what the function is going to be. So I think as designers, no matter what action we're trying to present, whether you give it a name or you give it an icon or whatever, you're always trying to get as close to pure affordance as possible. And most of that's actually just learned behavior. Myths that I get all the time, visual design isn't sexiness. What do you guys think visual design does besides make something look good? Does anyone have any comments? What does it solve? That's very generic to a user experience group. Get specific. Okay. Sure. Definitely directs the eye. So I think a couple things it does, definitely you pointed on a couple of them. One is it lends to the credibility of your product. You know, when you see something that's really poorly visually designed, you really don't want to whip out your credit card because, you know, who knows where it's going to go. It also can, you know, actually help pure usability. So, you know, color is commonly used to back up status and things like that. Error messages, alerts. My favorite quote around why visual design isn't sexy is from Charles Eames, where he said, "Who says that pleasure wasn't functional?" So even just evoking an emotion is, you know, is functional and is useful. Some of the best people that I think really go the full extent with a pure user experience and defining it are MailChimp. If you guys ever get a chance, MailChimp has a whole site dedicated to their tone. So if you're doing a particular button action, use this tone and this language. I mean, it's really sort of going to the next level in terms of defining an overall experience. Email is also UX. So, I got this email last year. I mean, you opened it. What would you think? Where would you even start? Yeah, like. There you go. So I go right to probably delete for most people, but there you go. Yeah, I posted this right on my Facebook. I think we sort of email is like the forgotten bastard child of the user experience, but it's very much your first touch point with a product, or it's that thing that you keep getting hit with and you keep wanting to log in. So most people forget about the design of your email, and the experience of your email is a really great tool of your overall user experience. So why don't you spend some time thinking about what that should be? And in enterprise especially, I think everybody forgets about that one. Who's designed a bazillion dashboards? So, I mean, I've designed so many that I just feel like I don't even know what a dashboard is useful anymore because I don't use them in my daily life. But apparently people do. Apparently CEOs and execs like to look at their dashboards. But I think when you actually do, research and you watch how people use products, not everybody uses a dashboard. It's very specific to like one user, like in Adam's deck when he was talking about personas, that's like very much usually the exec or the management person loves a dashboard, but not everybody else uses them. And they come from, if the history of them is basically from a cockpit. You want everything at your hands or within an arm's reach at all times. Data viz is for answering questions. You guys probably know this, but when we're trying to figure out what data viz to use, really what you want to ask is what is the answer you're looking for, and then that will help sort of inform what data viz you can use. Stop counting clicks. I don't mind a lot of clicks if I'm getting value with each click that I do. I also don't mind a lot of clicks if a click and a page sets the context of where I'm at. I don't think everything's about removing clicks. I think that it's certainly important, but clicks, navigation, taking a person to a place isn't always necessarily a bad thing. Everything doesn't need an icon. I'm working on a product for Bayer right now, and they're very big on icons, and they really want to use like very specific icons, and it's a challenge because with icons, it's the affordance thing. It's like, how can you pick an icon for a very specific action that just in and of itself is intuitive? Sometimes it's very hard, and I feel like a lot of apps nowadays can suffer from icon overload. Scrolling isn't that bad. So I think we've all sort of evolved as we've been using the internet and apps for a long time, right? That I think we've all sort of come to arrive at that you will continue to scroll as long as you're interested or valuable. So I don't think everything has to live above the fold anymore. Mockups or prototypes. This is basically, I still have to explain what a prototype is, but I mean, that's a prototype, what Adam drew on the wall. It's a very low fidelity version, but I would classify, maybe you could get some feedback off of that. And there's various versions of fidelity of a prototype. So a lot of times when we're working on projects, we want to arrive at what the goal is and what you're trying to validate, and then spend the minimal amount of time figuring out what's the lowest fidelity prototype you can use to get that. And that's all I have. So, thanks.